Hey, this is Derek with UofMTiger.com back for another video. Today I want to talk about the Wiim Ultra and how it works with Apple Music. As a lot of people know that have a Wiim Ultra or are considering buying a Wiim Ultra, it does not work with Airplay. And so there's a lot of back doors if you use Apple Music, and I'm going to go over each one of those, at least all the different ways that I have that I can connect my play Apple Music over the Wiim Ultra. Obviously Airplay, you get other features, and I'll talk about that as well. But before I start, I want to talk about Airplay 1, Airplay 2, and how that affects what goes through all these different Airplay devices. So if I say a receiving device is Airplay 1, that means I do not get multi-room audio through using the iPhone app, for example. But I do get lossless audio from an Airplay 2 app. Apple Music is an Airplay 2 app. So if you're sending from an Airplay 2 app to an Airplay 2 device, lossy. If you're sending from an Airplay 2 device to an Airplay 1 device, lossless up to CD quality, or I think it's 24/44:1. And so just keep that in mind with all these different setups, because that will also affect decisions you make. If you want lossless, you're going to need Airplay 1 or some sort of direct connection. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the easiest. The easiest way to do this is to open up your Wiim app, go to Inputs, and click on Bluetooth and connect your phone to that Bluetooth. That is easy. You can play Apple Music and all your other apps just like any other Bluetooth device. The resolution of the audio is not going to be the highest, but it is the easiest. Secondly, another easy way, but only if you have a Wiim Mini or another Wiim device that supports Airplay. If it does, then you can Airplay to that device, set up linking in the Wiim Ultra app, and link it to the Ultra. That way, whatever you're airplaying to that other device will play back on the Ultra. I personally have that set up so I have a setup in my bedroom that's just a headphone setup. I don't want to hear audio from the other room, so what I do is just Airplay to that and then connect it to the Wiim Ultra, and it only plays in here. So that is another option. Out of those two really easy options, there's a third option, and these are most of the options I'm going to come up with next. Well, I'll give you one more that doesn't require a direct connection, and that is if you have Chrome on a computer like a Mac Mini, you can launch Apple Music in the Chrome browser and cast to the Wiim Ultra. That is also going to not be high resolution audio or lossless audio. Because of the app that they use on Chrome, their web app is not as high resolution as the apps like on the iPhone or iPad. So, but that is an easy way to connect. You don't need a direct connection at all. Android also has an Apple Music app, and you can cast to it as well, at least on the Android devices that I have around. They're older devices, but they will cast from Apple Music to the Wiim Ultra. Now for direct connections, you have an optical input on the Wiim Ultra. I'm using that I have a switch box, an optical switch box, and so I'm using that input for a CD player, a Airport Express, and a Pure i20, which I'll talk about the two options that are Apple Music related. With the Airport Express, I'm using an old version that is Airplay 1. And so that way I'll get lossless audio from Apple Music up to 16:44:1 or 24:44:1. And that's probably my favorite option. Easy to use, pops up in the menu, I can play to it. You're going to lose your multi-room audio with that, though. If you do want multi-room audio, you can get a newer Airport Express, though I would not recommend that. I would recommend getting either a Wiim Mini or a Belkin makes a Airport Express 2 device or Airplay 2 device. And there's probably a bunch of different knockoffs that work as well. Just make sure that they have optical out if you want to use the optical input of the Wiim Ultra. You can also use the RCA outs if they have that, and use the RCA inputs of the Wiim Ultra. Outside of Airport Express, one of my favorite things, and most people are not going to have this setup, honestly, but I know there's a lot of audiophiles that are more interested in this device than your average consumer, so I'm just going to mention it. If you do have like a Pure i20 laying around, I had one in a drawer in my bedroom, and I also had an old iPhone 4S that I used to use with it. I had it in the kitchen for years, and then we ended up getting a HomePod, and I moved it to the bedroom, never used it because we got a HomePod back there, and I moved it into a drawer. It's been in that drawer for over a year, maybe 2 years. And when I got the Wiim Ultra, I was like thinking of different ways I could get AirPlay onto the device. And what I came up with was the connecting my iPhone 4S. It's the one with the old long connector, not before Lightning, and it sits on the dock, and it will extract digital audio out of the dock and play it back through the Ultra via optical input. Works great, and that's probably because the old iPhone still has Apple Music on it. I can play Apple Music directly on the device, and so that's one way to do it. You can also take the device. And if you have this app, most people probably don't. I have had an app on there called Air Music, and I can AirPlay to the iPure 20 or the iPhone 4S, and it will AirPlay and show album artwork and everything and play through the device. It's also AirPlay 1, so I believe that this is going to be lossless as well, up to CD quality. So that's also, if you have that, or a Wadia transport, I think is what it was called. If you have one of those devices like laying around or in a drawer somewhere, you may want to pull it out and use it with the Wiim Ultra and get really good sounding audio from your old iPhone. If you don't have an old iPhone or old iPad with that long connector, they do make little adapters for that will allow you to adapt it to Lightning, and so I can use it with a newer iPad as an example. I really like the iPhone setup because it's small. But if you wanted larger artwork, you could connect the iPad to it. I have other ways that I'm using the iPad, which I'll get into next. But you know, the device is really convenient if you have it laying around. If you don't have it, I would not recommend it. I would say probably try to find an old Airport Express. But if you do have it laying around, or if you have an old iPhone, it might be worth trying to track down a Pure i20 to pair with it. But anyway, that gives me optical output, and so that gives me two different optical devices that I can input into the Ultra to get Apple Music or other AirPlay audio. So all of the iOS devices, iPadOS devices, have some way to get digital audio out through a USB. Whether that's an old iPhone, whether that's an old iPad. I actually have a video you might want to look for. It's my most popular video of how to connect a Dragonfly DAC to an older iPad. And those pretty much works now. It's even easier now because Apple has added USB-C to their iPhones and iPads. So the iPad that I have back here, I have a topping DAC. You can't see this, but I'll get a close-up. I have a topping DAC connected to it, and so my iPad sits on a dock. So I just plug in one connector. It allows it to feed HDMI to my television. It allows me to get USB audio out through the DAC and into the Ultra. HDMI will also do audio if I want to set it up that way. I have it set up to do audio through the USB output. The little dock, it's called Satechi. It has, or Satechi or something like that. It has an SD card reader in it as well. So it's really convenient. It plugs into power, so anytime I put my iPad up there and plug it in, I'm also powering the iPad, so we're charging the iPad. So really nice. So, again, the iPad goes from the iPad USB out from the dock into the topping D10 DAC, which feeds a preamp that has 3 separate RCA inputs. No, 4. One of them I'm using for my turntable, but it has 3 inputs, and then one of them, so it has one output that feeds my Ultra, so I can have multiple different devices connected to the Ultra's RCA inputs. So I know that's a lot, but anyway, that allows me to connect my iPad, but also my Mac Mini. I have my old Dragonfly DAC connected to my Mac Mini, and it's feeding the Ultra's preamp the preamp into the Ultra audio as well, so I can get Apple Music that way. And it also plays all my computer music and everything else, anything I'm doing on my computer. So that's another option. My computer also has an app called Airfoil that works with AirPlay, Chromecast, and Bluetooth. I tested this with Chromecast. For whatever reason, the implementation that Wiim has on their device does not work with my Airfoil and my Mac Mini M1. You may have a different setup, it may work, but I cannot get that to work with casting. It still will allow me to cast to a Chromecast device and play back, but for some reason it does not work with the Wiim Ultra. Hopefully they'll fix whatever that connection is at some point. Wiim is known for doing a lot of updates, so it is very possible that they fix that. They've already had one Chromecast update, so maybe they'll have more down the road, but that's something to keep in mind. Then the last, and this is probably the one that a lot of people will use, if you bought the Wiim Ultra for its HDMI ARC input, so you can get TV audio out through your speakers, however you have your Wiim Ultra set up. My TV has AirPlay built in, so I can AirPlay directly from my phone up to my television, and it will show artwork on the TV and play music back through my Wiim Ultra. My TV, I believe, is AirPlay 2, so it is lower resolution audio, so that's something to keep in mind, but I do like having the artwork up there. And so, like if I'm working, I can have that third display with the artwork and be playing Apple Music or one of my podcasts or something, and it will play back through the Ultra. The one thing to think about the Ultra is even though you're not getting artwork on the Ultra like you would get through Amazon Casting or something like that, you do have a VU meter built in, so you can put it on that and still have something going on the display that's interesting, even though you don't have artwork being shown on the display. So those are all the different ways I'm using the different inputs on the Ultra. Like I said, that takes advantage of the HDMI input, the RCA inputs, the optical input. So I'm really utilizing every single one of these for different reasons. It's overkill really, but I wanted to have everything set up to show you that it is possible to AirPlay to this device, or at least get Apple Music to it with probably stuff you have laying around the house. I had my, like I said, I had the Pure i20 sitting in a drawer, but I also had my old Airport Express sitting in a drawer as well. I haven't used that in years, but this gives me really good audio via AirPlay to my Ultra. So I kind of disappointed that Apple is using AirPlay 2 to AirPlay 2 and using lossy. I wish they would use losses for that, but maybe they have an update down the road. I know that they wanted to make sure that people that have old routers could take advantage of AirPlay as well, and this probably gives them a lot of leeway to do that. On top of, they do have a longer buffer now than they had on AirPlay 1, so a lot of people had issues with AirPlay 1. I've never had an issue with it. I don't know if it's because of my router setup. I've been using an Orbi mesh router forever, and I just haven't had any issues whatsoever with dropouts. Knock on wood. So if you have any questions, let me know. I know a lot of people are confused about AirPlay. I try to cover the main points, but if you have more questions, let me know and I'll try to answer. So until the next one, peace out.